If there is one thing that we can learn from my rewatch of Stranger Things Season 1, it is that Steve Harrington is without a doubt a good character from the start, and now I have proof. Hello. This should be fun. I have a board. A disheveled board, but a board at that. So, what am I to do with my disheveled board, per se? Well, I am to make a recap video, specifically of Stranger Things Season 1, because I enjoy this show. So, I am going to, for my own amusement and the amusement of one of my friends who has never seen Stranger Things, and me trying to convince him to see Stranger Things, and hopefully convince all of you to rewatch Stranger Things, recap the entirety of the show in hopefully an entertaining way. If any of you are new here, hello, welcome. My name is Rowan. I am a certifiable obsessive fan of a variety of fantasy and fantasy adjacent media, which Stranger Things most certainly is. It is fantasy adjacent, and I will be certain of it. And I make videos about media, culture, history, and a variety of television shows. So if you're interested in any of that, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing, because I will be making more of these. I am going to make one for each season, and depending how long my season 2 review is, probably multiple for season 4, because season 4 is long. I'm going to try to be succinct. Basically, this is a recap. This is not a full plot summary. I'm not telling you everything that happens. I'm telling you an entertaining rehashing of this with our characters, our main cast. I've only put main cast up here, which means this board is going to get more crowded later for seasons 2, 3, and 4 as the main cast expands, but just because I only have so much printer ink. So we will only be referencing main cast pictures. If there are other important pictures, I will put them in post, like this, so you all can see and enjoy what is happening. So yes, I hope you enjoy. I'm going to try to keep this video to a reasonable length, like that's going to happen. So stick around, grab a snack, grab some water, like I have, and enjoy my wildly biased recap of Stranger Things Season 1. And before you ask, what do I mean by wildly biased? I mean Steve Harrington's my favorite character, and I am team Steve and Nancy, and you will understand that later. Like I said, biased. Anywho, where does our story begin? Well, with Season 1, Episode 1, Chapter 1, The Vanishing of Will Byers. Now, I actually forgot, but before we get into our boys, including Mr. Will Byers here, we have a little bit of a prologue, shall one say. On November 6th, 1983, in a Department of Energy lab in Hawkins, Indiana, a certain incident occurs. One may say a bit of murder, bit of monster murder. Basically, the show opens on a chilling prologue of a bunch of scientists being terrified and or eaten. Important to note, we do not see what is eating them. We do not know what is eating them. We shall know later, but not yet. Then we will cut back to our 4 main characters. Mike Wheeler, Lucas St. Clair, Dustin Henderson, and Will Byers. Our 4 young middle school boys playing a innocent-ish game of D&D, aka Dungeons & Dragons, aka a role-playing game. They are playing and fighting a dangerous monster called the Demigorgon. This Demigorgon is destroying them. And in one last major second, they're about to find out what happens at the end of their dramatic campaign when Mike's mother, Karen, bangs open the basement door and goes, "Boys, you have to go to sleep. It's a school night." Because, they've been playing for 8 hours in what is truly one of Mike's most comedic scenes. I forgot, rewatching this show, that Mike was fun once. He was a lovely character. He was a character I liked in Season 1. I didn't like him the first time I watched Season 1 because I was like his age, and watching Season 1 at only a couple years younger than him, he reminded me of all of the other boys that I knew who were his age, and a lot of them were really annoying to me then. So he was really annoying then. As an 18-year-old, I can now appreciate Mike, not that bad in Season 1. Mostly because I've seen him in Season 4, but that's for later videos. Now, briefly, while his friends are rushing to leave, Sweet Dustin, I adore Dustin, goes up to Mike's older sister Nancy's room because Dustin has a cute little schoolboy crush on her, and we get introduced to Nancy, who is on the phone with her best friend Barb, talking about unimportant things. However, one can infer that she's talking about her new boyfriend, Mr. Steve Harrington. We'll get to Steve in a second. Now, a brief character introduction to what's happening. Mike, the somewhat self-described leader of the group, likes D&D, very protective of his friends, very good friends with Will. He believes in Will no matter what. We will see this a lot more in season 2. There are arguments to be made of who is whose exactly best friend. This season, there is a lot of tension between Will and Lucas. Not Will and Lucas. And that is sort of, an argument of, like, are they best friends? Which is a plot line, like a couple others I'll mention, that I think was dropped later. Lucas lives closest to Mike on his same block. He is sort of, I would say, the most outgoing of the group. He is certainly the most determined, and he definitely sticks with his beliefs a lot more than sort of the others, but he's still just as big a nerd as the rest of them. Dustin is a sweet, delightful person. He is kind, and he's sort of the character who tries to keep the rest of the boys together, at least in this season. And by rest of the boys, I mean these two, because if you couldn't tell by the title, something's going to happen to Will. So Will Byers, the Byers family, they live out on the outskirts of town, a bit of a rundown home. So Will bikes home in the dark. Now, at first he's biking home with Dustin, as Lucas already split off, but then Dustin splits off. And Will, he ends up on Mirkwood, which is their fun Lord of the Rings referencing name for a road. And he goes, and he's a bit suspicious, and he sees something in the woods. And it worries him that he sees this something in the woods. And so he then runs home. He's very suspicious, and he's being chased by something. What is this something? We are yet to know. But Will, being the smart little 80s kid that he is, runs out to his shed, tries to get a shotgun. Does this work? No, because the lights in his shed blink out of existence, and Will vanishes, screaming as he sees a strange monster coming towards him. And that, my friends, is the introduction of Stranger Things Season 1, Episode 1, The Vanishing of Will Byers. Now, while I am here, I want to bring up the first instance of what I would like to call Will Byers being a dreamer. You could also call him a seer. His D&D character is Will the Wise, a sorcerer. Will, in the D&D game, specifically says, the Demigorgon, it got me. So Will predicted this. And I'm not going to say this in the spoiler section. I forgot to mention there's going to be a spoiler section at the end of the video where I talk a little bit about theories and how season 1 things connect to theories, which I'm going to need I want a bit more evidence first before I finish that section, because season 1, objectively, as much so as I'd say season 1, in contrast to seasons 2 and 3, has a lot more connected to 4 and therefore 5. 2 and 3 are, as we'll see later, a bit of side quest seasons. They're a lot more about character development, of relationship development, plot development. Sort of takes a back seat. The world building takes a back seat. The mystery has a bit of divergence. Oh, yes, I forgot to mention, before Will goes for the shotgun, I was checking my notes, he tries to call 911 for help. Smart little boy. And he hears only static. Remember that. The static is a recurring theme. Now, following this disaster, we spend the night, we wake up, and we meet Chief of Police, Detective Hopper. We love Hopper. Hopper is the majority of these children's surrogate or actual father figure. Because with the exception of Lucas, whose father seems okay, and Nancy and Mike's, whose father is okay, most of these kids don't have a father. He is either estranged, dead, or unmentioned, or Steve's dad, who is a complete jackass. But again, Hopper is a father figure character. He's a bit of rough times. He's, alone, sort of sad, sort of drunk, but he is our chief of police, and he sniffs out trouble and conspiracy like a bloodhound. We also then meet Joyce Byers, Will's mother. Now, she is played by the queen of 80s horror, Winona Ryder herself. Joyce is a great mother. Joyce works hard, long hours to try and help her children, to try and keep her family afloat, because her ex-husband is a deadbeat jackass, and she is good at it. We also meet Jonathan. Jonathan is Will's older brother. He is a photographer. How do I put this? He does love Will. That is something he is good at. Will, who we will not see again for many, many episodes, who is very minimal in this season. He is in flashbacks or he is in weird voice things. So actually we're gonna like, oh my god, this is genius. He is upside down. We'll get to why that's fun in a second, but I'm really happy I came up with this. He's upside down. Now Joyce is a bit surprised because she can't find Will in his bedroom while she makes breakfast for school. Asks Jonathan if he came home last night. Jonathan doesn't remember, so Joyce goes and calls Karen Wheeler, Mike and Nancy's mom. Karen answers while Mike and Nancy have what is a great reminder that they are siblings. We don't get that enough, the fact that they are siblings. In later seasons, they end up split up a lot. In, I'd say, season 4 especially, they kind of just forget, and I love season 4, but they kind of just forget their siblings. So we get a great little interaction here. Mike is teasing Nancy about Steve. It's all super fun, but Karen tells Joyce, no, Will didn't stay over. So Joyce starts to get worried. She starts to worry about, I'm going to leave in the me hitting my face with this thing. This is a very unedited video. I hope you guys have fun. So Joyce, like any good mother, heads to the police station. Hopper, again, arrives at the police station where he is informed that Joyce Byers is waiting for him in his office. She's freaking out. She's telling him he needs to do missing persons for Will. Will is gone. Will is missing. She is losing her mind. Not literally, but she is very worried. She's a very good mother. She's very attentive. We love Joyce. Joyce is the mother to a lot of these characters. Joyce eventually agrees to call her ex and ask about Will before Hopper starts a missing persons report and leaves. We then get back to our boys, our party boys. That is how they refer to themselves. They are the party, the D&D party, arriving at middle school where we are introduced to the fact that these very kind boys are being bullied. Why? Because they're nerds and it's 1983. Say no more. We also see Nancy. Before we meet for the first time, my darling, my boy, Steve Harrington. Now, Stevie Boy is Nancy's boyfriend. Nancy finds a note in her locker after talking to her close friend Barb to go and meet Steve for a makeout session in the bathroom. Not where I'd want to make out. A high school bathroom? The germs. I'm gonna have a heart attack. But this is where we meet Steve. He is a lovable dork. He is also referenced to be one of the coolest kids in the school. King Steve is his nickname. And this is important also for later. So Steve and Nancy flirt some more until eventually they decide that Steve is going to come over later and they're going to meet up and go study for her chemistry final. Steve is a year ahead of Nancy, so Nancy is in 10th grade, Steve is in 11th grade, and that is how it is. So he is remembering, oh, how much I hated that chemistry class. That is them. Steve is, I'd like to reiterate, a perfect gentleman in the scene where he's making out with her in a high school bathroom. There is absolutely no indication that Steve does not like her and is only dating her to sleep with her. I'm correcting that. By the direct canon text of the show, Steve is not that bad. And if anyone knows the lore, Steve was originally supposed to be a lot meaner, a lot more of a bully, but the Duffer Brothers loved his actor Joe Keery so much that they're like, no, we're going to change it. And so they did actually change his character a lot after later. And that is, I think, definitely seen in this first episode because I think a lot of people, myself included, before season 4, when they went back, I rewatched before season 4, I kind of had this memory, oh, that Steve was a jerk. And the first time I rewatched it, I remember thinking to myself, wow, he really isn't. I kind of just thought that. And that, I think, is definitely really important here. He's not a jerk. So, because this is long, we are moving on. We are now returning to the secret laboratory, which there will be a picture of here. This is where we see a group of men in dark suits, and I am once again reminded that the Duffer Brothers must have totally been X-Files nerds as children. They are blocking off a quarantine zone in hazmat suits, and eventually we see this weird drippy goo thing deep within the bowels of the lab. I'm feeling kind of sick just based off of the description I just gave you, so keep that in mind. And we also see a giant tentacle burst through a hole in the wall. So that's not creepy. I'm not suspicious about this whatsoever. If we couldn't tell, the lab is, they're a bit shady. And there is specifically here mention of a girl. The girl. The girl as if it is a title. Keep that in mind. We'll get back to the girl. I'm making this video mostly for people who've probably watched Stranger Things and want like a succinct recap to remind themselves, or for people that haven't watched it yet but, want some, a succinct way to consume it. So, to save us the time and the foreshadowing, the girl is Miss 11 here. I'm telling you her name early because I'm not just going to refer to her as the girl. That feels rude. 11 is the girl. We see her with an entirely shaved head running through the woods in a hospital gown. Again, wouldn't be suspicious at all. She ends up at a local restaurant. She steals some food, and the restaurant owner seems a kind man, gives her the food in exchange for, tell me your name, are you okay? Pretty worried for her, calls Child Protective Services. Back to our remaining boys. They have finished class, and their delightful science teacher, Mr. Clark, gives them the great news that their radio equipment has come in, because these boys are all members of the AV club. Again, there are scenes later where this is looked down upon because it's the 80s and nerds were frowned upon. I myself, being a nerd, disagree with this entirely. Nerds are awesome. So, here we are. They are very excited. Except then, after they've played with their radio, they see Police Chief Hopper come in to tell them that Will is missing. Again, I'm taking a long time for this first episode because a lot of stuff comes into it. The later episodes will hopefully be shorter, if I'm sane. So this lot go to the police office, argue like besties. It's a whole thing. They eventually tell the chief about Mirkwood, which is a road. They volunteer to help. He denies them because they're about 12 at this current time, I believe. And as such, they are annoyed by this. Will these 12-year-old boys listen to an adult when he tells them not to do something? Is it A, yes, B, no, C, are you crazy, or D, of course not? If you picked B through D, you are correct. Because these boys, of course, immediately disregard all of Hopper's questions and decide to start investigating for themselves in the woods. Because of course they do. We get a flashback that is vaguely important to establish a location of Joyce finding Will in his secret castle, Castle Byers, which is a little wooden hut fort thing in the woods. This is important. I'm just mentioning it because that is an establishing location. There are a couple more scenes at Castle Byers. Now, after 11 has eaten some, restaurant owner has given her, I think he may give her a coat or a shirt or whatever. While he's calling CPS, which I already mentioned, we see 11 twitch her head and stop a fan, an electric fan specifically. Now, a bit later, again, we see the man open the door for Child Protective Services. Lo and behold, he gets met with the smiling face of a blonde woman in a suit who promptly shoots him in the head. 11, seeing this, bolts through the back door and runs out into the woods at night. The Child Protective Services, let me use air quotations there, lady then orders the people behind her, dressed in dark suits, to search the place. I wonder who this could be. If you're guessing the people in the lab, you are correct. Now, also important to note here, the lab has been phone tapping people. And the lab phone taps a conversation between Joyce and her ex-husband during Hopper and his deputies' search for Will in the woods. Now, Hopper, at this point, he is, and I'm sort of jumping around timeline-wise just to sort of get through story threads. So Hopper ends up at the Byers' house, and he searches the shed. He finds the broken glass. He starts to suspect foul play. Something is amiss with Will. Because, again, the light bulb broke when the monster appeared, and something happened to Will. We're still not sure. He was taken by something, or he ran off. We don't know. He was taken by something. Now, we're cutting back to the Wheeler siblings, our chaos gremlin children whom I adore. And they are both arguing with their mother at dinner because Karen, what to say about Karen? Well, she doesn't do things that make me question her morality until season 3. So, for the moment, she's a good mother. She's a good mother. Well, everyone who knows exactly what I just referenced and how traumatizing it was for 12-year-old me. Anywho, the Wheeler siblings are both annoyed. Mike is annoyed because he wants to sneak out and look for Will with his friends. Nancy's annoyed because she wants to study with Steve. Both are unhappy. Both state this. Both break the rules. Nancy, in her own way, stays in her room, but Steve comes up to her. He climbs up her terrace, her weird garden thing, because of course, it's just easy to climb into a second-story window of a suburban home, because it's always easy to climb into a second-story window of a suburban home in 80s media, even though it's made in 2016. I live in a vaguely suburban home. I live on the second floor. It is physically impossible to climb up to my room without a ladder, No matter how good a climber you are, there is nothing to hold on to. Steve is adorable. He is a very polite, cute character in this scene. We get a classic line of his, "I'm stealthy like a ninja," after Nancy gets worried that people would have heard him. And they hang out, study, snog. They are playing with Nancy's chemistry flashcards. This is one of the first instances of things that will come up in season 4 that make me believe that seasons 2 and 3 are just filler to get to 4. Maybe just 3. 4 has a lot of direct connections to season 1, like a lot of them. And obviously it does, obviously. But one of those connections, those chemistry flashcards, they will come up again later. Nancy's room comes up again later. Now, cut back to our party boys. After talking on their walkies, because that is an important note, if I have not mentioned before, they all have walkies that are somewhat long distance. They have some range issues that they use to communicate, because this is the 80s, no one had cell phones, but they do have walkies, which is fun. They go out on their bikes in the pouring rain in the middle of the night to search for Will, while Hopper and a lot of the rest of the town are searching for Will in different areas. Briefly, we're going to cut back to Steve and Nancy because they're going on right now. They are kissing. Important. But specifically the lines, "You're an idiot, Steve Harrington," and "You're beautiful, Nancy Wheeler," those come up again. Again. Direct correlation between season 1 and 4. I'm going to be hammering this in. I love this scene. It's really cute. They kiss while Africa plays. It's a fun scene. Again, Steve is not a bad guy. This is part of my proof. Steve Harrington is not a bad person in this first season. He's a touch misguided in 1 or 2 episodes, but he is valid for his feelings being hurt because he really cares about Nancy here. And as he admits in season 3, spoilers, he really loved Nancy. We'll get to why it's loved later if you don't know. Now, finally back to Joyce before we get back to the boys for our final bit of this episode, because I have been talking about this episode for like way too long. And Joyce gets a mysterious, staticky phone call. This is worrying to her. She's confused. And she thinks it's Will. Spoiler alert, it's probably Will. Or someone else, but that's for the season 4 spoiler theory section. So we'll get to that later. This call keeps cutting out, very spooky, very ominous. And as this is happening, we are cutting back to our boys in the woods, and our boys finding one terrified, drenched, very few words spoken 11 in the middle of the woods. And that, my friends, is the true inciting incident of the plot of Stranger Things. The party finding 11 and our paths crossing for the first time. So, what does this mean? What happens after? Well, because that, my friends, leads us to chapter 2, The Weirdo on Maple Street. I cannot believe that I've only done 1 episode. Now, this episode starts with our boys bringing 11 back to Mite's basement because, yeah, hey, this strange girl we found in the woods, let's totally bring her back to my house. Not what I'd have done, but it was the 80s, so who knows? They interrogate her, asking who she is, where she's from, etc., etc. Mike, out of the 3, is the most enamored with her. Lucas is the most suspicious, and Dustin is the most confused. Gotta love that these 3 get away with this without any adult supervision incurring on them. That's also a theme. It was the 80s. Now, they give her some clothes. These clothes, actually, I was right, it was episode 2. And they go and talk about her. You know, what are they going to do with her? You know, they got to tell people. But if they tell anyone, they'll find out that they were looking for Will, which they weren't supposed to do. So they decide they'll give her in the morning. Lucas wonders if she escaped from the nearby insane asylum. So that is where we're at with these 4. Eventually, they do, however, figure out what to call her because she shows them her wrist tattoo. And so Mike decides that her name is Elle, short for 11. Again, I'd like to note, Mike is being quite supportive and polite here. He's a very lovely character in season 1. He's a really nice boy. I really respect his character. I'm going to do a flashback to me saying this in the season 4 episodes. And we're going to compare what happens to Mike now versus then. And you're all going to understand why I'm emphasizing this. Because Mike is a objectively great character here. He is a good protagonist for season 1. Although there is an argument to be made who is the protagonist of this show. It is an ensemble cast. I will make my predictions of who I think the ensemble of each season was. Who I think the main character progression of each season at the end of the season. But to put it simply, the main characters of this show are the boys, 11, and 11. I would say Nancy and Steve are also up there for character development. Jonathan, not so much. Maybe you could make an argument for Hopper. Joyce, again, doesn't really develop. She's mostly just the mother figure for most of the show, but she's a great mother. She's an amazing mother. We love her for it. But that's sort of where we're at. So I'd say the boys, 11, Steve and Nancy, Hopper, and maybe Max, and maybe who. Yeah, it's hard. This show is an ensemble. It's hard to pick a main character. But if you have to, it's probably 11 or it's probably. But if you have to, for the purposes of overall story arc, in season 1, it is Mike and 11. They are the two main characters. Now, Hopper and Jonathan both don't believe Joyce that was Will on the phone last night as she continues to spiral of worry for her son. This will become a running theme. People aren't just don't believe each other enough in this universe, and it annoys me. Now, we cut back to Mike sneaking Elle some food the next morning before school. And he deduces from some of the rare words she says that she is in trouble from the bad people. In trouble, we say. It's worrying. That she is in trouble from the bad people, and so Mike decides that he is not going to have Elle go around Coda's mother for help. He's going to keep her hidden in his basement without telling his friends, and he's going to skip school to hang out with her. He pretends to go to school, then comes back through the back door of the basement, which I love it. Back door to the basement that you leave unlocked. That is true 80s suburbia right there. This is when we meet government agent Dr. Brenner. How I truly hate Dr. Brenner. And he is listening in on one of Joyce's calls again. Because of course he is. Joyce frantically called Hopper the night before after he got the static call. This is not good for the lab. They don't like this. So they're going to do something about it. I don't like what they do about it. Now, cut back to our teenagers, Nancy and her friend Barb, chatting before Steve invites them over to his house because his parents are away. This is important, I promise. Now, Lucas, again, at school, very determined to find Will. Him and Dustin are a bit surprised Mike doesn't show up and get a bit suspicious. But again, it's nothing to be worried about yet. But Lucas is determined. He is determined to find Will. It's basically his defining character trait for most of the season. Out of the 4, I like Mike the best in season 1 because he has the most to do and the most development. Lucas, again, is given mostly this one trait. Dustin, again, is given mostly just trying to keep everyone peaceful. And Will is gone for most of it. By season 2, Lucas and Dustin and Will are given a bit more to do, and therefore by season 2, I'd say Dustin and Lucas are my favorite of the party, but in season 1, Mike is definitely my favorite just because he's the most interesting to watch, because he has the most to do and the most, I'd say, complex character moments. Wow, Mike Wheeler having complex character moments. The tables have changed by season 4. There are some brief flashbacks between Jonathan and Will that have very little bearing on the overall plot, aside from to introduce the fact that their father is a douchebag, and he and Joyce used to yell at each other a lot, and so Will would listen to "Should I stay or should I go?" really loudly. This is entirely to just show, again, building up between Jonathan and Lucas. They have a sibling relationship. Jonathan does care about Will, which I will give him credit for. So that's sort of, where we're at. Now, while we're having flashbacks, what's Jonathan doing? Well, Joyce is buying some new phones, sitting next to them, and trying to figure out what's going on. She is a good mystery solver, this woman. She should be a police detective. Because Hopper's at a loss. Not for long. Don't worry. We'll get back to Hopper. Now, while Joyce is at the store, the government agents go to her house, and they end up investigating the shed, and they end up finding weird signals. Now, as someone who has seen 13 seasons of Supernatural, I know an EMF reader when I see one, but that's not what they are. They're like weird something or other scientific stuff. They never explain it. They never explain what signals well, I'm not gonna say it yet. The world outside of our own that exists within this universe gives. They never say what signals that stuff gives off. I don't get it. I want them to explain it, but they don't. So yeah. Now, Mike, who stayed home from school, gives Elle some of Nancy's old clothes, shows her around the house, shows her modern conveniences, the television, the reclining sofa. And while she's seeing this, Elle sees a picture of Will on Mike's mantelpiece and points at it. And this is a bit suspicious. And Mike goes, "Hey, wait a minute, do you know him?" However, then his mother comes home from the store, and so he has to rush up and hide Elle in his room. And he makes her promise to stay in his closet with the door closed. And this is the first instance of promise. Now, promise, again, I mentioned the You're beautiful. Nancy Wheeler, you're an idiot Steve Harrington before. There are motifs in a lot of these relationships. We'll get to more later, but for Elle and Mike, their motif is promise. Friends don't lie, friends keep promises. This is a consistent thing between the two of them that recurs like at least once a season. Now, Elle promises, even though she's got some PTSD flashbacks from her traumatic lab childhood, and while Mike tries to get out of getting in trouble, we see glimpses of sort of this training of her being dragged into a room for no reason and trapped there as a child. We'll get back to that. Now, while searching for Will, Hopper gets a call about the dead restaurant owner who was helping Will. Now, because it's a small town, everyone knows everyone, and he's quite suspicious that this guy had allegedly, was staged to have committed his own murder. Now, we obviously know that it was the lab that killed him, but everyone else thinks it wasn't him. Hopper, however, he's a bit suspicious. He's getting quite iffy. He thinks there's some odds goings on in his town. Now, Jonathan, this entire episode, basically spends the day also skipping school, except he goes to visit his deadbeat dad in, I think, Chicago. I can't remember. It's not important. His deadbeat dad literally shows up for like 3 scenes and is completely unimportant after those 3 scenes. And I can't be bothered to care about. I cannot be bothered to care about Jonathan and Will's deadbeat dad in comparison to all the other more interesting things that happen in this show. And so you shouldn't have to either. Now, Lucas and Dustin end up at Mike's. They're confused. They're like, hey, what's going on? Mike explains, actually, no, I'm not giving 11 up. I'm keeping her. The 12-year-old saying, I'm keeping her is truly funny. I digress. And so Lucas gets pissed. He thinks they should be looking for Will, which they should be. Mike says Elle knows something about Will, which Lucas doesn't believe. And then Lucas goes to open the door to Mike's bedroom, which they're all talking in, and go tell someone. When we get 11 going full telekinetic X-Men on them and slamming Mike's door shut and locking it with her mind. When I tell you how funny this scene is, the shocked horror on these kids' faces, the astonishment is hilarious. Now, while investigating the restaurant's owner's death, Hopper talks to a guy who was at the restaurant the day before, like a regular, and this regular mentions how he saw a little boy at the restaurant stealing food. Hopper thinks it's Will. He asks the man, could it be Will? The man says no, he's got a shaved head. Hopper then asks, could it be Will with a shaved head? And the man's like, I don't know. So Hopper starts thinking that Elle is actually Will and that Will was there. He's adjacent. He's on the sort of the right track. This will lead him towards more answers, but that's where we're at. Now, Hopper starts searching near the restaurant, which results in Mr. Clark, their science teacher, finding a scrap of fabric in a drain of a hospital gown. This was 11's hospital gown because she escaped from that drain, which is something that we will not officially have confirmed for us until season 4. So there you go. I saved years and years of waiting, or in this case, a couple weeks or months, depending on how long it takes me to make all these videos. Now, again, back to the boys and Elle. Mike brings Elle some food. Dustin fangirls over Will's powers. Lucas is suspicious and weird. The one interesting thing about this section, though, is they do try to explain the concept of a friend to Elle, which is a very important concept. And it's a very sweet scene, and it's very cute, and they're all sort of being really friendly and nice to her, and I love it. I think it's adorable. This show is best, I think, not when it's the plot twists, but when it's the heartfelt moments between siblings, between friends, between romantic partners. I think that's one of the reasons I love the show. I love the characters. I love the plots, obviously. I love the relationships, obviously. But I really do love the way the characters interact with each other and the way that those interactions impact the plot. Which is why when we get to season 3, which most people cite as their least favorite, I will agree with you. A lot of it is not as good as other seasons. But I can't not love the Scoops crew. The Scoops crew fun. So we'll get to that. We're cutting back to Nancy, Steve, and Nancy's friend Barb because, how to put this lightly? Because Nancy's breaking the rules. She tells her mom, oh, I'm just studying with Barb. They're both going to Steve's. Barb drives them in her car. They end up at Steve's. They go to a party. They go to his pool. There's drinking. There's cannonballs. Barb feels a bit left out. It's Nancy, Steve, Barb, and 2 of Steve's more cool kid friends. So that's where we're at with this. This is going great. It's going well. Nothing bad seems to be happening for the moment. And then we get to some ominous stuff. Jonathan's been investigating the woods. Jonathan ends up at the party, ends up taking pictures of everyone jumping in, having a good time. And that's sort of, what's happening with them. Now, midway through this, we cut back to the boys and Elle in the basement, where Elle flips over the D&D board to try to explain what she knows about Will. So Elle sits at the D&D board. Elle uses the D&D board to explain things. She uses the pieces. Will's wizard piece, Will the Wise, represents Will. She then flips the D&D board over, as I flipped Will's picture, and puts Will on the opposite side of the D&D board. The iconic creepy theme of this show plays in the background of this scene, and I absolutely love it. It's a great scene. It's really ominous. I highly recommend that you don't just watch this recap. Please rewatch the show. The show is so good. But if you want something fun to listen to while you do laundry or the dishwasher or something, this is what this is intended to be. This is background noise. This is fun sort of stuff. I make this in the hopes that you listen to this, then it re-inspires you to want to re-watch the show. Don't take this instead of watching the show. The show is really good, and the visuals are really good, and the music's really good, and the acting is really good, considering most of these kids were 12. So I highly recommend that you watch the show. Now, the most important part about this, with Will being flipped over, is Elle explaining that Will is hiding. He is hiding from the Demigorgon, which is a really dramatic reveal because she plops it down, and it's really funny. It's not funny. It's fun, but I think it's kind of funny. And that is sort of where we're left off with these kids. Again, cut back to the teens. Nancy and Steve, kissing in the pool, having some fun. It's November 7th or 8th at this point. So it's cold. This is Indiana. And Jonathan, taking some pictures in the woods. Now, here we go. Okay, look, I'm going to get some attack for this. The pictures are creepy, damn it. He's taking pictures of these random teenagers without their consent, and I get he's a teenager, but I get that it's 2025 and we all just expect our pictures being taken constantly, but this guy's using film. This is counter for Jonathan Byers' creepy stuff. This is the first offense. There are other offenses later. Most of them are season 3. Most of my issues with Jonathan comes from season 3. But this really put me off of him when I first watched the show, and it still puts me off him today. The taking pictures of the people, it's really creepy. Now, we're cut back to Joyce. Poor Joyce. She's fallen asleep. She's very traumatized. What's happened with Joyce? Well, her phone starts ringing again. Ominous, creepy phone shenanigans ensue. She thinks she hears Will, and he responds, and she hears him say, "Mom." The phone ends up breaking with sparks of electricity, and then her lights start going haywire. Good old "should I stay or should I go" from that flashback starts playing off of Will's stereo. Joyce is freaking out, and this scene is ominous as heck. It is crazy, man. I was like, this is scary. 11-year-old me watching this for the first time was scared, objectively speaking. Now what happens? She goes to Will's room, the electricity suddenly stops, and an odd hand, reaches out for her from the wall in a terrifying eldritch nightmare fuel kind of way. Not good. She runs. Then she goes back because why are you doing this, Joyce? Why? And I have to say, watching this scene for the first time in years, not probably years, probably a couple months, maybe a year. On a rainy day when I was home alone, I was freaked out, man. I was scared. Now, to finally be done with this episode, because again, I'm taking a long time. These were not supposed to be this long. We cut back to Steve and Nancy and Johnny Boy hiding in the woods, taking pictures of people. And our beloved characters, whatever, it's getting cold. They go inside to dry off. So Steve and Nancy go inside to dry off. There's some, whatever. Steve's friends go off to have sex. And Barb is like, Nance, we should go. But Nancy fully wants to have sex with Steve here. Nancy's fully like, nah, Barb, it's good. Just wait down here. I'll be down in 15, 20 minutes, whatever. Doesn't actually say 15, 20 minutes, but she's like, I'll be down soon. It's fine. So Steve and Nancy, head upstairs. They, Steve gives Nancy some clothes. She puts them on. There's some flirting. There's him staring at her like she's the most beautiful thing in the world in some like baggy clothes. And then Nancy decides, you know what? I don't care. I want to have sex with him. So she, starts taking off her clothes. They start kissing, quite hot and heavy, half naked, whatever. And we cut back out to Johnny Boy in the woods, zooming in and taking pictures of Nancy half clothed kissing Steve. I get it. You all liked season 2. I get it. They tried to retcon that this happened. But what the hell, man? He took pictures of them. And the show tries to portray Steve as if he was bad? Are you kidding me? Anything this dude does when he finds out that Jonathan was taking pictures of Nancy, half clothed, having sex with Steve, he so deserves to get hit for what he did. He deserves punishment. Does he get it? No, we brush past this. But I digress again. Because we cut back to Barb. Oh, Barb. Oh, dear. Barb is sitting above the pool. Now, she ends up she had cut her finger a bit earlier on a bottle, whatever. It's bandaged up, but it's bleeding. Now, this pool, Steve's pool, it's going to become an important location. It's going to become an important character. Again, directly, this is going to tie into season 4, but whatever, we'll get back to that later. So Barb's blood falls into the pool. And some lights start flickering. There is, for a split second, a monster appearing behind Barb. This monster then vanishes, and the lights, go off. Then they come back on as Jonathan looks down to check his camera. He looks up, and Barb is gone. Barb has vanished too. So Jonathan leaves none the wiser as Steve and Nancy continue to kiss, and the lights turn back on in the pool. And that is the end of episode 2. Well, I think we can all agree that was dramatic. This brings us, my friends, to episode 3, chapter 3, Holly Jolly. Gods, I'm only on page 8 of my 21 pages of notes. Maybe this is going to be a 3-part video. God, season 4 is going to take forever. Now, this episode begins with Barb in a dark, weird, snowy ash, dark hellscape of something or other, clawing her way out of the pool covered in goo. Not good. Now, the monster that took her appears above her, and this, my friends, is when we get our first full, proper, horrifying look at the Demogorgon. So, as Barb is getting slowly killed and dragged around by this monster, Steve and Nancy are having sex. That's what happens. Keeps cutting back and forth between these two things. It's a wild sequence, and will be an important reference back when we discuss Nancy's trauma more in depth in season 2. Now, Nancy ends up leaving Steve again, goes to find Barb, can't find her, just thinks she went home without her. So Nancy, in Steve's clothes, makes her ways home, ends up getting lightly in trouble with her mom before, going off, because her mom, and just sort of, Karen just lets her kids get away with a couple things. But, it's the 80s, guys. We're cool with it. The next day, Jonathan wakes up at his house and finds his mother has brought all the lamps in their house into Will's room and is sort of talking to Will, hoping the electricity will flicker and she'll get an answer. Jonathan kind of starts to think his mom's losing her mind a little here, which if we didn't know she was right, he wouldn't be wrong, but I digress. The boys again discuss the Demogorgon because again, all these things get D&D names. It is the Demogorgon, it is a monster. It will be the Demogorgon the rest of the show. They discuss meeting up and figuring out what to do about Will after school. And Mike gives Elle a watch, tells her what time to look for. It's like an electric watch, so it's not like a clock watch. And once it hits that time, she should go out to the power lines behind his house and meet them there, and they will go search for Will. Now, it's the next day at school. Nancy's a bit confused where's Barb gone, but she's flirting with Steve. They're having a good time. They're, happy, in love. They're cute. It's not a very, important scene, but again, he's not a douchebag to her in this scene. Jonathan took pictures of her half naked. This is objectively better than this. On a basic objective list. This is a better boyfriend material than this. And I have more proof, but I need to, keep that in, okay? Now, back over to Hopper. What's he been up to while all these things have been going on? Well, he's decided he's gonna go to the lab. And his deputies and him, they go to the lab. They get no answers, but they're on the right track. He's working at it. He goes to the lab. He's trying, guys. He's trying. Give him a break. Hopper is really suspicious of the lab. Like really suspicious. Just let's know that for sure. Elle, stuck at the Wheeler's house, practices floating things. She floats some Star Wars models, which is a really fun scene. Like that was like so fun. That was so fun as a Star Wars nerd. I'm like, oh, she's floating a Star Wars ship. I'm loving it. That was almost certainly the intention. Now, Elle also ends up playing with the TV. She goes upstairs and she ends up on the static section because there was a time when the TV was static. I might seem odd to you all, but it could go static. And we see her flashing back after she sees a Coke commercial to a time where she was at the lab and Dr. Brenner made her smash a Coke can with her mind. Woo! This totally won't come up again later. In other words, if you hadn't already figured it out, she's overpowered. Also, I feel it's really important to mention that the Byers have a dog right now in this episode. A dog that will mysteriously vanish before the end of this season and be never seen again, but not die. And it really annoys me. Mike, Lucas, and Dustin are all looking for rocks for Lucas's slingshot during lunch. They find a couple, but they also get confronted again by Mike's bullies. Again, the bullies are a recurring theme. Don't worry about them. They'll get their comeuppance. Now, Jonathan, the idiot that he is, decides to develop the pictures he took at school. Someone sees these pictures and notices, hey, wait a minute, is that Steve and Nancy? He took some of the pool as well. Okay, that's another important note. Jonathan didn't just take pictures of them. He took pictures of the pool. He took pictures of everyone. And he took one of Barbara right before she vanished. Now, to do a long collection of scenes short, Steve ends up finding out about these pictures. He ends up tearing them apart in front of Jonathan and then making them fly everywhere and then dropping Jonathan's camera and breaking it. Nancy feels quite bad about this, which is fine for her. But also, again, Jonathan took pictures of Steve and Nancy half naked, about to have sex, without their consent. Dude deserved to get his camera broken, man, okay? This scene is tried to is framed to make Steve like a jackass, but like, he's defending his girlfriend. Compromising photos of his girlfriend were taken. Dude. Now, Nancy picks up the photo crumbs, because of course she does. And this will come back later. But like, this is more proof that Steve is actually a good guy this season. Like, this is not a douchey thing to do. His girlfriend and him, pictures were taken of them half naked. What, you think anyone else wouldn't destroy that? You think Jonathan, if this didn't happen to Jonathan, he wouldn't destroy this picture? Anyhow, the Christmas like craziness continues at Joyce's house. Just a bit of, a bit suspiciousness. Karen Wheeler shows up with her young daughter Holly. They chat, whatever. But Holly ends up following a blinking Christmas light because she's like a 6-year-old kid. And this ends up bad. She follows it to Will's room, and the lights flicker again. Everything goes dark. And then a hand sort of, starts coming out of the wall at her. She screams. Joyce comes in, gets her out of there. The hand disappears, and they decide she should leave. But this Christmas light craziness is a bit, we're foreshadowing quite a few things from season 4 here again with this scene. I'm not sure if they were even intentional foreshadowing, but like, it's there. Like, I feel like Stranger Things to me feels like a softer version of Game of Thrones theories. Like, a Stranger Things theory is entirely predetermined that like everything is foreshadowing, but then also we don't know if everything is foreshadowing or if it was all retroactively foreshadowing because they look back and added it. Like, we have no idea. We shall see. Anywho, Hopper and his deputies keep investigating at the library. They end up discovering that Dr. Brenner and his lab have quite the history with kidnapped children. And a woman even accused them of kidnapping her daughter and got a settlement from them. There's quite a lot of experimentation histories with this lab. I wonder if that's suspicious whatsoever. Oh, wait, it is. Elle goes out to meet the boys. They end up searching for Will, and Elle brings them to the Byers' house. Also, I want to note that at this point, Elle sees a cat, which gives her a trauma flashback to when Dr. Brenner tried to make her kill a cat, and she refused. Poor girl was traumatized by that. She didn't kill the cat, which got her punished, but she then killed the soldiers trying to punish her. So, like, if someone tried to make me kill a cat, I have cats. They aren't anywhere near me right now, which is kind of annoying. Like, they didn't even ask for lunch, so I'm kind of scared. But anywho, Nancy starts investigating Barb because she's like confused. She goes back to Steve's house. She finds Barb's car parked sort of a little ways away where it was parked. She gets worried. And she goes to Steve's pool to see if there's anything weird there, and she gets briefly startled by something in the woods before running off. What is this? Who knows? We shall see. Now, while the boys are investigating, Joyce decides she needs more Christmas lights. She buys a bunch more from her place of work, and she starts stringing them up. Again, this is foreshadowing to later. A lot of Christmas lights. She starts painting letters. She starts getting Will to communicate with her. This is a really good act. These are really well acted scenes. It's really fun. Again, these scenes are great. This is an amazing section, and I really do enjoy this part. But the fun chaos is truly trying to sum up how do I explain what's happening here? Before the letters, she gets Will to blink the lights once for yes and twice for no, and she finds out that he's alive, but he's not safe. So that's what she finds out. And so that's when she gets the idea for the letters. I kind of forget it because I don't remember everything exactly, so I took notes. Now Nancy ends up going home. Her mom's a bit mad at her, but she gets worried. She's asked Nancy what's wrong, and Nancy goes, I think Barb's missing. Now, because I told you I'd be more succinct for this one, guys. The boys keep searching. They keep searching. And they end up seeing a string of police cars go by, and they get very worried. They go and follow them, of course. Now, while this is happening, Joyce is getting a message using her painted up letter experiments where Will says to her that he is right here. And Joyce asks how to get to him. He then tells her not how, but he tells her to run, and more arms are trying to stretch out through the wall. This is why this show is considered a horror show. The Demogorgon tries to push itself out of the wall, and so Joyce runs out of the house, quite obviously. Now, the boys follow the police to the quarry. Copper has been called to the quarry. They're heading there. This big, open quarry area with some water at the bottom. And there they have found a body. Everyone thinks it is Will. The boys are devastated, but Elle is not, because Elle knows that it is not Will. Mike gets quite angry at Elle, tells her to go home, quite devastated because he does not believe her. No one believes her. But we know that Will is all right because Joyce heard from him through the lights. So Will, he's still in the upside down, indicated by this really fun, clever way of doing it, which I think is pretty funny. And that, my friends, is the conclusion of episode 3. So here we are. I have a time frame because I will get hungry for lunch soon because I had barely anything for breakfast. So we're going to return to season 1. And we're going to continue on from episode 4, The Body. Now, this is an episode that, of the season, I'd say it's the least interesting. But that's mostly because we know Will's still alive and all the characters don't. But that's just a me thing. So this episode starts with poor Joyce suffering a great deal, not really believing that her son is dead. And this obviously is, very traumatic for her. So she continues to deny it. She still thinks Will's alive. And we're with Joyce. We're with Joyce. We love Joyce. Joyce is correct. Now Hopper 2 is a bit suspicious because Hopper thinks the lab had something to do with this, and he does not believe that Will simply fell into the quarry and drowned. So Hopper and Joyce are both remaining suspicious on this. Mike is grieving. He ends up looking at Will's drawings. These I feel like will come into play later. Again, there's a lot of theories about Will's art. And I am heavily of the opinion that some of Will's drawings are prophetic. That painting he had in season 4, now they're thinking about Will. Mike is grieving, and Elle, playing with the walkie, ends up making some noise come out of it. And as her nose starts to bleed, which, if not mentioned before, that is the sign that her powers are active, Will singing starts to come out of the walkie. And Mike, astonished, runs over and realizes, holy crap, Will's still alive. So now Mike, Joyce, and Hopper are all in the know that, something fishy's going on. Will might be dead, Will might be alive. Now that is our 3 main believers. They believe Will is alive, and they will keep that belief. Now Mike at this point is trying to contact Lucas. Lucas at this point, traumatized, doesn't want to talk to Mike. Mike fails. However, he does get Dustin, and so Mike and Dustin do talk. And so Mike and Dustin are together, and he manages to convince Dustin that Will is still alive via Elle's walkie shenanigans. So now we have 4 Will being alive believers. This is also, I'd like to reiterate, not even 10 minutes into the episode. I feel like we have to express, you might be forgetting just how long Will Byers is actually dead for, because only about 15 to 35 minutes of this episode, which is like an hour long, is taken up by people who actually believe Will is dead. Most people think he's alive. Now Hopper is waiting with Joyce and Jonathan at the coroner's office, and something a bit fishy happens. He hears from the I think security guard or the assistant, the secretary, whoever's there, the coroner, the normal coroner at the Hawkins Hospital, left the night before and was replaced by a coroner from State. Why is this interesting? Well, because Hopper is very suspicious of State. Again, back to those lab reports. He senses something fishy. He's sensing a bit of a cover up, shall we say, which is entirely correct. Now back to good old Nancy and no one believing her about Barb. This becomes a recurring theme. Nancy's going to get some PTSD from this. Don't worry about it. So Nancy and Steve argue about Barb. This is objectively the only scene in the entire season that I think Steve is being a touch of a jerk. He's being a little bit of a jerk. He's not listening to Nancy. He doesn't believe her. But he's also, rightly skeptical because Nancy has no evidence. That's the problem. She has no evidence to support Barb being kidnapped or Barb being killed, but she also has a feeling. And this will come back again later into when I do season 3 and do a direct comparison between John and Steve. I've been watching too much Game of Thrones. Between Steve and Jonathan's differences in reacting to Nancy's theories. Nancy's theories are almost always correct in this show. Actually, I think they are always correct. She is arguably the most prophetic one aside from Will and Elle. And so Steve and her have a bit of a fight. They end up going their separate ways, and he is very hurt by this. Nancy, in comparison, also very hurt. This will lead to teaming up with Johnny Boy. We'll get to that in a second. Now, what ends up happening is the boys end up discussing what Elle heard. Lucas doesn't believe it. This entire conversation happens through a variety of superhero media metaphors, which are kind of hilarious and really do work, again, to sort of build up that these boys are the quintessential 80s nerds, and I love them for it. It's quite fun. It's a great sequence, even though it's sort of sad, but guys, we know Will's alive. It's fine. Now, eventually, Lucas is convinced to sort of, figure something out, and they decide to go to the AV club room at their school because Elle needs a more powerful radio. So they dress Elle up in some of Nancy's old clothes, give her a weird little wig, and head over to the school. Sadly, they end up getting caught by Mr. Clark right when they're going to the AV club, and they have what is genuinely a hilarious comedic interaction where they try to explain Elle's presence. They say she's Mike's cousin from Sweden. It's really funny. I highly recommend, again, this is a really fun sequence. Again, as I've said prior, this should not be instead of watching the show. This should be a inspiration to go rewatch the show and a way to remember the show was fun while you I don't know, do your laundry or something, but I have to do my laundry later. So eventually they get forced to go to Will's memorial at the middle school. They end up sitting through some speeches, whatever. They try to rush back to the AV room, but they are stopped by Mike's bully. Oh boy. So Elle does not like bullies. And Elle, while not fully socially graced, she knows that these boys are bullying Mike. And because she knows that these boys are bullying Mike, she is quite cross with them, which results in my girl Elle using some of her lovely telekinetic powers. Again, nosebleed signifier. If you ever see her nose bleeding in the show, she's using her powers. At least until by the time we get to season 4, the nose bleeding sort of stops. She's gained in strength. Very, classic X-Men-y type, I don't know, Vampire Diary. I don't know. What do I want to compare it to? There's something I want to compare Elle's power progression to, but I don't know. I mean, I guess my own characters. The characters I write have that type of power progression, but there's someone else. Maybe Hope? I don't know. I'll think of something by the time we get to Elle's expanded power expanded power base. Anywho, everything's going great. We're having a great fun time, and I'm going to cut back to this. So Elle uses her powers, and among other things, she makes the bully wet himself. This is a very embarrassing moment. The bully kind of wants a vendetta, but Mike is ecstatic that Elle has helped him with his bully. He looks at her with the biggest puppy dog heart eyes that you can have on something that is not a literal cartoon, like in Phineas and Ferb, where the character's eyes literally become tiny hearts. So, yeah, the romance is brewing. out of this season, out of the irony of this season is that the romances are basically only the Wheeler siblings. Only the Wheeler siblings get romances this season. Joyce does no one else get romances, which is valid. They're children, but by the time we get to seasons 2 and 3, basically everyone will have a partner, and I think I'll have a picture for most of them. I might even include Susie. I might even give a picture for Susie like by the time we get to the end of season 3, but who knows? Because she is a character in 4. We'll get back to that. While this is all happening, Nancy's talking to the police, to Hopper's deputies, about Barb being missing, and no one's believing her. This will become a recurring theme, as I've already mentioned. Nancy tends not to be believed, which is stupid. So, if Nancy mentions anything in any of the promotional material for season 5, we should be worried about it. I'm still worried, okay? I'm still worried about about her Vecna vision from season 4, okay? I'm still worried about that because she is always right. Now, Hopper spends most of this episode investigating the state troopers. Now, Hopper ends up talking to a guy at the bar, reveals tragic backstory that he has a dead daughter. She died of cancer, I'm pretty sure. So this guy that Hopper's talking to found Will's body. And eventually, he tells Hopper that he was told to call it in and not let anyone too close to the body. This leads Hopper to the coroner's office, where he doesn't break in per se, but, forces past some people, knocks out the state trooper, and ends up going into the office and cutting a jagged line down Will's chest. This is where he finds that the dead body that we think is Will is, in fact, not Will, but a stuffed replicant thing. Again, the Duffer Brothers were so X-Files nerds back in the day. And this, my friends, is Hopper's story this episode. I'm being a bit looser with the timelines just for succinct sake. Now, Nancy, after arguing with her mom based on the cops' testimony while this is all happening, ends up finding, back in the thing, the pictures that Jonathan took. The torn up pictures that Steve tore up. And she sees a bit of something, we don't know what, in the background. This something she's quite suspicious of. And so because she's quite suspicious of this, she goes and, of course, talks to Jonathan at the funeral home. Because what else would you do but go to a funeral home to be like, hey, I know my boyfriend, broke the camera and you were being a creepo who was trying to take pictures of me half naked, but, and your brother's dead, but, see, I've got this mystery to solve. And ironically, it actually works. That is genuinely the funniest part of this episode. Now, eventually, Nancy starts describing things about this thing she thinks she saw in the picture, or that she thinks she saw that night. And Jonathan eventually starts filling in some blanks because her description is eerily similar to Joyce's description when she told Jonathan about what she thought was coming out of their wall. And they both end up saying he didn't have a face at the same time. And so they looking through these photos, decide something funny is happening. And so they decide to investigate. Now, while this is happening, the lab, which I don't have a picture for, I'll maybe insert something here. Some poor science people at the lab are not having a good time. In fact, one poor test subject is going through the weird tentacly portal and ends up getting... That didn't end well for him, but I digress. So again, as we're going here, we've established now the lab is doing some shady dealings, some bad things, which brings us back to our holy trinity of the remaining party members, and Elle and Joyce. And the loveliness this show, which is hard for my recaps, but it does a great job of like sandwiching plot lines together, like sandwiching one scene, which is also connected to another scene. Again, especially with music. Again, season 4 foreshadowing my argument that season 1 and season 4 are basically the meat of the story, and that 2 and 3 are just filler. And I love filler, trust me, I do. But like, I have an argument for it. We'll get to that later. Anywho, fun guys. Joyce blasting music to try and get Will to talk to her, and we're cutting back constantly between the boys trying to contact Will and Joyce, cutting back, and they and Joyce both at the same time end up hearing Will, and Will says, "It's coming." Chilling. Creepy. Ooh. The radio then catches on fire, and the boys and Elle are like, we gotta get the heck out of here quick, and so they do. The episode ends with a couple dramatic things. Joyce running out of her house crying, and her ex showing up. This should end well. Nancy and Jonathan developing some more photos that Jonathan took, and ending up with a picture of the Demigorgon, and Hopper, fed up with the lies, heading to the lab, because that's where we're at, guys. That's where we've gotten to. And so that, my friends, is the end of season 1, episode 4, chapter 4, The Body. So, fun story, I was gonna finish this all yesterday. Then the trailer came out. I needed a few hours to emotionally recover. I have theories, which I will not say. That'll be in that'll be in the season 2 spoiler section, because I got theories, I got parallels, I got foreshadowing. But anywho, it is the third straight day of me trying to recap only the first season, which is arguably the shortest season of this show. God's help me. The season 4 video is gonna actually break my computer. That's the other fun part about this story. My computer nearly crashed yesterday when I was trying to edit the first half of this video. So, like, it's an experience. Anywho, I'm going to be busy editing later this week once I fix my computer storage problem. Until then, episode 5, The Flea and the Acrobat. We start this episode with Hopper being, well, a chaos gremlin at best. He decides that, you know what I'm going to do, guys? I'm going to break into the lab. It's a great plan. Just, breaking and entering as a police officer. And he searches the lab, he finds some weird stuff. And among the weird things that he finds, Hopper finds a child's room, a girl's room, with some drawings. Yeah, I'm totally keeping that in. And eventually, after he finds that child's room, he keeps going. He goes further. And he finds, what do you find in the bowels of this lab? Well, the Vine portal, of course. That's what he finds. Why wouldn't he find the Vine portal? It's ripe for the picking, really. Hopper finds the Vine portal. What's Joyce doing as she mourns her son? Well, she's having a long conversation with her ex that, of the scenes in this show that literally have no impact on anything else whatsoever, this scene between Joyce and her ex may be the most unimpactful scene in the entire show. I tried to find a way that this connects. And short of Joyce's grieving Will, which leads nowhere because actually, no, she isn't. She still thinks he's alive. This scene has absolutely nothing in it. I've spent more time talking about a scene that has nothing in it than scenes that have things in it. But I just want to really express this, that Joyce's ex-husband has very little impact on this plot whatsoever. And his existence in this is minimal. Anywho, back to our party boys here and 11. They are going over what they heard Will say. All this fun stuff. They're going over what they heard Will say. And among other things, and this is a couple interesting things happen. First off, they discuss it where Will is being dark and empty. And then we get the payoff of this fiendishly clever choice of mine to flip Will's photo upside down. And we get the titular naming of this other dark, empty place as the Upside Down. Now, the Upside Down is another world. It is an upside down world, if you will. I'm gonna have to start making this maybe I'll start making the bottom the upside down. We'll do that in season 2. We'll start playing with that in season 2, okay? Maybe, and a lot more in 4, but definitely in season 2. So, where we're at here. Will Buddy's in the Upside Down. The Upside Down, we've started to realize, is another dimension, another world. So, what do these young boys who don't know much about other dimensions do? Well, they go to their science teacher, of course. Who else? But before that, they do what any good collection of fantasy nerds do. They go to their D&D book. So Dustin connects this Upside Down, this other world that Elle has been telling them about, to the idea of the Veil of Shadows from D&D. And he goes to his D&D guidebook and he starts reading out the explanation for the Veil of Shadows. And basically, this is how we get the idea. Now, this is a recurring motif in this show that I really appreciate, which is the fact that these kids just use D&D metaphors for things, and then those things happen to be exactly spot on correct, with brief minimal exceptions. And I think that's a fun aspect of the world. I think it makes it more creative. I think it makes it fun, which is why this is pretty entertaining. So Dustin continues to read on about the Veil of Shadows. He reads that it is a dark reflection of our own world, a place full of darkness and death. And the exact quote being that it is right next to you, but you don't even see it. Keep a pin in that. That's an important detail for later, guys. It is. Now they figured out where Will is. He's in the Upside Down, hence his picture being upside down. However, they now need to get there. So they all turn to Elle and go, hey, you know how to get there? And she shakes her head and they get, which is, their plot for the episode, and I really do respect this. I respect that the Duffer Brothers went, okay, guys, so what do we do here? We gotta do something. We now know what this place is. Now they gotta get there. Can Elle know how to get there? No. She's got some traumatic memory blocking. Season 4. This is one of those moments also where season 4 making her have some traumatic closed off memories really helps to prevent, one may say, preemptively so, any plot holes for the things that they added in season 4. Who knows if those were always intentional or not? I'm not going to speculate. It's not like Germ. We don't know if the Duffer Brothers are architects or gardeners. At least I don't, as far as I'm aware from reading things. I should probably actually rewatch their masterclass. Before part 2, I should try and rewatch their masterclass and see if that gives me any like hints as to how their storytelling goes. Anywho, here we are. Now, Jonathan, Johnny Boy, shows up from, setting the funeral up, finds his deadbeat dad there for the funeral, gets pretty pissed about it, tries to get him to leave and fails. Again, I get that the dad is important in this season, but again, in context, looking back, all of these scenes are totally inconsequential. Like genuinely, if the Buyer boy's father had been dead, nothing would have changed whatsoever. And that's where we're at. Now, folks, we have Will's funeral. A lot of things happen. The dog that again just vanishes mysteriously, doesn't die, but doesn't get, I don't know, anything, just vanishes between seasons. Goes to Will's castle, tries to search for him. Joyce has a flashback to Sweet Will drawing. He's a good artist, Will. And he's drawing himself as Will the Wise with some green fireballs. What does this mean? I don't know what this means. I want to know what this means. I don't know what it means. I sense that these green fireballs may have something to do with something later, but it's mostly just, a cute scene that in the long run of things establishes a connection between Will and drawing, because here's the little red herring that is going on throughout most of this. Hopper thinks that 11, aka who he knows as the kid who is at the restaurant, is Will. And so having Joyce have this flashback of the drawing and establishing that Will draws will later tie into Hopper and Joyce having a discussion about this, because Will's a really good drawer. 11 is not. And this is how we distinguish that actually the kid from the lab is 11, a different kid than Will. Now, Hopper here, he got caught in the lab, misses the funeral, wakes up in his house, very confused, like, what the heck happened to me? However, as he remembers that the lab is quite sneaky, he's instantly suspicious and sweeps his entire home for bugs, finding one in a lamp. They really like to bug things, the government agency. This is such a, it's so 80s core, the bug in the lamp. It truly, one of the most 80s core thing about this film. Proving my point that the secret government agency cannot help but bug everything under the sun, they start listening into the radio recording, because again, they've bugged everything under the sun, of the boys in the AV club and what that radio transmission was. Good old Dr. Brenner, painfully, instantly realizes that it was Elle in the AV club and says she was there. Back to everyone's favorite badass, my girl Nancy Wheeler. We get a great fun discussion. We get Jonathan and Nancy discussing very specifically the Demigorgon. And what do they decide to do about this weird, strange monster in the woods? Well, they go after it of themselves, of course. Why involve the police? This will become a running theme in this show, and I freaking love it. Now, at Will's wake, the boys, all sort of pretending to be sad because they sort of know Will's alive, go over to Mr. Clark, who I probably should have had a picture of because he is quite important in this first season. I wonder if he'll show up in season 5, man. I feel like he should show up in season 5. We kind of lost him in 4. Anyway, they go over to Mr. Clark and they ask him for a scientific perspective on other worlds. Sort of trying to get away with it and sort of like, oh, we hope Will's okay in an afterlife sort of way. Now, Mr. Clark goes on about explaining parallel universes, a la my boy Leopold Fitz, space-time, a giant block of paper with a paper plate and a pencil. And he explains the theory of the flea and the acrobat. So, he's got the plate. You've got a line through the plate. If I can find a picture, I'll insert it here, but it's hard to find pictures and you can't screenshot Netflix, so I probably won't be able to insert a picture here. But he shows the tightrope, and he goes about that there is an acrobat on a tightrope. And on the top is one world, and on the bottom is another world. The acrobat can't go through the tightrope to get to the other world, but the flea on the tightrope with the acrobat can, because he is different. The tightrope represents the dimension. You can only go forwards on the tightrope or backwards on the tightrope. You can't go up and down. You can't go under the tightrope. But the flea can travel both backwards and forwards and up and down, therefore slipping through the dimensions and traveling worlds. The flea can also go upside down. And he says that in order to become the flea, in order to travel between worlds, you would obviously need a massive amount of energy in order to open a gate between the dimensions. So what do the boys decide to do? Well, they decide to try and find a massive amount of energy to open a gate between dimensions, of course. Why wouldn't they? So after the funeral, the boys go over and explain this to Elle and tries to get if she knows where the gate is. Again, trauma memory stuff. She is reluctant to answer, but Dustin, my genius boy Dustin here, is confused by his compass. You see, his compass is going haywire. And so he has figured out that there is a strong electromagnetic field. The gate, as Mr. Clark just said, exudes a strong electromagnetic field. As such, all of the compasses that the boys have are wrong. They aren't pointing north. They're pointing to the gate. So, as deduction holds, if they follow the compasses, they will find the gate. Now, my boys here will bring this compass trick up again in season 4, and by season 5, I'm pretty sure it won't matter, judging by the trailer scenes, but I digress. So while they're doing this, Nancy's practicing with a baseball bat in her garage. Just, she's getting at it, swinging it around when Stevie Boy shows up. This scene is, I think, this picture of him is from this scene, I'm pretty sure. I tried to get all season 1 pictures of them. I will change these. I'll update them. I'll give new pictures per season so you guys can appreciate the change in hair. But by season 4, Mike's hair sucks. So Steve shows up. He apologizes for being a jerk. They make up. They kiss. And Nancy tries to sort of, calmly shoo him away. Shoo him away. Try to get him to be, not involved. Because she, while sort of pissed at him, still cares about him. She loves him. And therefore, she doesn't want him dragged into the Demogorgon mess. Girl, like that was ever going to happen. No one any of these people knows ever escaped getting dragged into the Demogorgon mess, except ironically her mother. Her mother, well, never mind. We'll get to her mother in season 2. Oh, the trauma those scenes got me. Now back to Joyce and the endless pain that is her continuously having scenes with her ex-husband, whom I loathe. She realizes that her ex-husband only there because of the money that they're getting for Will's death from the state, throws him out and is sort of heartbroken. This brings us back to my girl Nancy. Her and Jonathan, they're out, in the woods shooting some cans because, we got to practice our shooting. So Jonathan has a revolver. Again, make note of this. This will be there's season 4 references to this revolver. So Nancy gets a revolver, and so Jonathan shoots. He's sort of okay. Now Nancy shoots it straight off in one shot. She is a really good shot. This is, again, an important part of her character. She's a badass. We love it. Basically, what we'll start to develop is these characters all have different strengths. Nancy, Steve, Lucas, and Hopper are offensive characters. Dustin, Joyce, Jonathan, Will, and Mike are defensive, and Elle has superpowers. This is sort of where we end up at near the end of, I'd say by season 2, we've reached that point. But for now, we got Nancy being a badass. Now, this is also where we get some sort of backstory about Nancy, about how her parents, just got married to get married, and how she does not like it. And this is a really important part because of Nancy's character arc, because she clearly has issues with not only her parents, but the idea of marriage for marriage's sake. And this, my friends, will come in to my season 5 theory about Johnny Boy biting the dust, but we'll come back to that in the spoiler section of probably season 4. Back to the boys. They're searching the woods, and as someone who lives in New England, the only thing I could think of in this entire sequence was, oh dear gods, all the ticks. Now during this excursion, Elle flashes back to her time in a sensory deprivation tank, being submerged in there to amplify her powers. Hint, hint. This will become a recurring theme that comes back quite often. This scene explains how Elle can see people when they are far away. Now, this also is a revelation that Elle was screwing with the compass, which royally pisses Lucas off, and leads to the boys fighting. Mike and Lucas start fist fighting while Dustin yells at them to stop because Mike is trying to protect Eleven and Lucas is pissed that Eleven is keeping them from Will. During this instance, Elle accidentally uses her powers on Lucas, throwing him back from Mike, and she gets another flashback of listening in on a Russian spy. This results in Lucas running off and Elle running off, and Mike and Dustin being left confused and worried. While all this is happening, Nancy and Jonathan have also gone into the woods, because why wouldn't they? Everyone should be going into these woods, guys. I swear, it's a great plan. Now, they end up following a trail of blood. Not good. And they eventually find a small gate in a tree somewhere in the woods. We're never exactly sure why this gate's there. I think the implication is a Demogorgon came out of it and got Barbara or Will. I'm not sure. I do not know what part of the forest this is in. Like, some sections of the forest have some distinguishing features, distinguishing areas. I don't know where this is. They follow it, and Nancy gets sort of separated from Jonathan, because sure, and she ends up going through the gate and going into the Upside Down. We're gonna leave her like that for a sec, because dramatic impact. So Nancy is now in the Upside Down, and Jonathan does not know where she is. The final scene of note from this episode, because even though that is the final scene, there is one brief scene where Hopper shows up at Joyce's house, searches it for bugs, and then confesses that he thinks the lab is behind this and that Will isn't dead. And so Joyce, this entire time, my girl, my queen, has been right. And that, my friends, is where we are at the end of episode 5. I have returned for episode 6, The Monster. Again, the episodes all have like chapter titles at the start, which is really fun and I highly appreciate it. And I recommend, again, watching the show. But we've returned. The monster, the Demogorgon, is here. So, my girl Nancy, she's sort of between. She's tilted to the side. She's in the Upside Down, technically. I'd also like to point out, my girl Nancy is only the second character in this show to go into the Upside Down. Will this be important later? Probably. My girl is going to have some badass moments according to the season 5 trailer, and it's worrying me. But until I know more, I'm working under the assumption that this means nothing. She's fine. Johnny Boy's the one who's going to bite it. But until then, she runs from the Demogorgon and escapes back into the gate, terrified and scared out of her mind. We now get to my least favorite section of the entire season. Jonathan helping Nancy get cleaned up from all the goo, because she was, quite gooed up from that little, couple minutes in the Upside Down. So they go back to her room. Jonathan helps her get cleaned up. And then Steve shows up, to climb through her window and spots this. And my poor darling Steve, he feels really bad about this, okay? He feels very heartbroken. You can see the heartbreak on his face. And I don't like it. I'm not having a good time with this. So this is gonna bite all 3 of them in the ass pretty soon. So that's where we're at. Because Steve misinterprets this interaction. Which, to be fair, it's very easily misinterpretable and there is subtext. But whatever. But anyways, while the teen drama is teen dramaing, Hopper and Joyce are being the sane adults that we need them to be, that they're never going to be again. Not ever. Like, this is the last of them being sane. By season 3, they're like fully in the deep end. And by 4, Joyce is just like, let's go to Alaska. It makes sense, okay? So Hopper explains to Joyce about the lab. He tells her how he found a kid's room. He tells her how there's all these things happening. And he tells her that he found a drawing in the kid's room. Joyce latches onto this because when Joyce says it was stick figures and not really good drawings, she realizes that there is no way that this could possibly be Will, because Will is a really good artist. So then Hopper remembers the article that he found about the woman who said that her daughter was taken by the lab. And he realizes that maybe he's been looking for the wrong missing kid this entire time. And that's how we get 11. Oh yes, Nancy's PTSD. Nancy's PTSD is entering the chat. Nancy is showering off all the Demogorgon stuff, and she starts to have some flashbacks to the woods, to the vines, to a pool. Will this come up again? Not for 2 more seasons. She gets over her trauma by questionable means. He's so gonna die in season 5. Like, he's on the chopping block, man. So Nancy's PTSD, this is important again for the season 4 foreshadowing. I stand by. Seasons 1 and 4 are the main point. Seasons 2 and 3 are sort of your medium grade, your sort of, filler episodes. A good filler episode nonetheless, but still a filler episode all the same. Yes. Hopper and Joyce's side quest. Is this important? Sort of. It gives us some backstory. Again, the thing about the 11 backstory, it is important in this season. It is important in next season. And then it's sort of not important again. I don't know if it'll be important in season 5, but basically, we discover that this woman's daughter was kidnapped by the lab. She is now catatonic, basically. So she's in a catatonic state because of a bunch of drug use. It was the 70s. Enough said. They go in, go to this woman's sister, and they hear from this woman's sister. They hear about how when this woman volunteered for these tests, these mysterious tests at the Hawkins lab, that, she didn't know she was pregnant, which resulted in, obviously, 11, our superpowered girl, having some little experimentations. This gives me very Shadowhunter Chronicles, Valentine Morgenstern's wife accidentally getting dosed with angel blood vibes, giving us my girl Clary. But I'm probably going to cut this reference because if people have made it this far into the video, I'm allowed to reference Shadowhunters. So basically, we get all this backstory, and we, again, basically confirmation that 11 is this woman's daughter, Jane, who was kidnapped by the lab and has been taken by them her whole life. So that's their side quest. Back to my boy, Mikey. Mikey's not doing well. So Dustin visits him, and Mike's spiraling because Elle is gone, and Mike is really puppy dog crushing on her. So he's losing his mind. So they agree, to try and make up with Lucas, to try and, fix the party's problems, because this is season 1 and these boys don't have crushes on girls yet. By season 2, it gets even funnier. But anywho, Mikey and Dustin head over to Lucas's house to try and, mend fences, build bridges. Do they succeed? Hell no. Mike apologizes, he tries to apologize. And they sort of make up until they decide that they need Elle to find the Demigorgon, and Lucas loses it again, and he decides to go off on his own to get to the gate because he wants to find a way to get Will back. My boy Lucas is sticking to the main quest. He's not going on the side quests like the rest of our characters. He's sticking to the main point, finding Will Byers. Mike and Dustin, in contrast, search for Elle, who has been walking around in the woods this whole time. This won't end badly at all. So my girl Elle, getting pretty hungry, she decides, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to break into a supermarket. And she, having no social knowledge whatsoever, just starts, destroying things using her telekinetic abilities. It's really quite entertaining, okay? She breaks into the supermarket, steals some waffles, throws some people around with her mind, starts nosebleeding, and runs off. Now, Dustin and Mike, riding their bikes along, go and see all this commotion at the supermarket, and we get another truly brilliant comedic line. Season 1 has a lot of underrated comedic lines. It's quite entertaining. And one of them, my personal favorite, is, Mike going, is Dustin looking at Mike and going, "You don't think?" And Mike responding, "Definitely." And this is about the fact that they're certain that it is Elle who is here. Among other things, this scene also before this, they're so talking about Mike's crush on Elle. Mike, again, doesn't comprehend it. He's a cute little 12-year-old. He doesn't understand the concept yet. He will later. He will later. I suffered through years of explanations of why he will later from my BFF. So trust me, when we get to season 2, you'll get some fun stories of my first experiences with some of these scenes. But for now, that's what's happening. Lucas. Now, Lucas, my boy, he's going off on his own. He's going off biking to, in search of some things. And you know what happens? Well, see, he sees a power man, pulling up by his house. He's a bit weirded out. He waves at him. He goes off on his own business. I'd like to remind all of you that the lab likes to use power vans. This won't come into play. Now, while this is happening, we get truly the only Nancy and Jonathan scene in the show I ever loved. And I still love it to this day. And that is these two 16, 17-year-olds going weapons shopping. Only in Indiana in 1980s could this happen. So they go to the, I'm not sure what store. In season 4, there is a like army surplus store that they go to. I think this is just like the hunting store, but the hunting store has some crazy stuff in it. So these two cute little kids, they go shopping for some monster killing tools. We get a bear trap, we get some giant tanks of like gasoline, I think. It's not propane. In New England we call it propane, but I'm pretty sure they just got like gas tanks or whatever. A lot of ammo, a bit of weapons, a thing of nails to spike up the bat that Nancy has. It's a whole thing. And they come up to this store owner, and he looks at them kind of funny because again, they're like 16 here, and he's like, "What are you kids doing?" And Nancy straight up goes, "Monster hunting." And the store owner just goes like, "Oh, okay, sure." And it's hilarious. I have great fun with like this is the only Nancy Jonathan scene I will ever love. Now back to Stevie Boy. He's a good boyfriend, okay? And this section especially, I'd like to point out, Steve did not in any way, shape, or form participate in his jerky, cool kid friends spray painting derogatory things about Nancy being a slut onto the town's movie theater. He didn't. He was moping around, being a broody little dark-haired baby because these boys are all broody dark-haired boys. All of them are broody dark-haired boys, except for Dustin. He is the only one who I cannot say brooded. Okay, Lucas, king of brooding. Mike, brooding extraordinaire. I mean, like, look, Jonathan, he's never not brooding. Even Will broods, okay? Will broods in season 3. And so Steve joins the tradition of the boys in Stranger Things being wackadoo brooders. And so he's brooding, his friends do this. Nancy and Jonathan see this coming back from the weapons store. Nancy gets pissed, slaps Steve in a scene that is great for edits when contrasted with all the other times he's been slapped or punched. And there are certain edits, especially the one of his character arc to experience that like it's my favorite thing ever. It's my comfort edit, okay? So then we get some derogatory language from his friends. He's not doing anything about it. So Jonathan and Steve get into a fight. Jonathan and Steve having a fist fight and Jonathan winning is unironically the most absurd thing about this season. Jonathan is never again shown to have any fighting capabilities whatsoever. Not even when trying to run for his life. This boy is dying, okay? Stevie Boy gets beaten to the brink of death in every single season. So, that's where we're at right now. They get into a fight, start beating each other up. The police start coming, they get out. But Jonathan and Nancy, they get arrested. So they get taken to the police station. Now, moving past this plot line, Elle is sitting in the woods eating her stolen waffles when basically Mike and Dustin are going searching for her. They end up finding the bullies from earlier. Now, Elle hears some screams. She goes to investigate. Well, we don't see it, but we can assume. And the bullies try to get Mike to jump off the quarry cliff into the water, or else they will beat up Dustin. Mike, being the good friend that he is going to do it. And he does. And he doesn't fall because he just starts floating until he's lifted up and plopped down on the ground. The bullies are freaking out. And we turn and the camera pans and we get our girl Elle, nose bleeding, ready to defend her boy. Again, season 1 Maleven was cute, okay? There was nothing wrong with them yet. It all came later. Later decisions made this all go downhill. So 11, breaks the bully's arm, makes them all scamper off, and Mike, Dustin, and 11 hug, and everything is fine and dandy. Except no, it's not. It's really not, because while she's doing this, Elle, she's got a little bit of a flashback to the Demogorgon before the gate opened. She was like, and this is a plot hole. This is a plot hole. Because the thing is, the implication established is that the Upside Down season 4 was made after Elle's. Like, this is a plot hole, okay? Like Elle having a vision of a Demogorgon before she escaped the lab is a plot hole, I think. I think so. I'm not certain. I'll ruminate on this and bring it up in season 4. Anywho, Lucas ends up at the lab. He takes his compass, he finds his way to the lab, he uses his binoculars, because Lucas is a spy. Lucas is my boy. Lucas will be like an FBI agent. If we have a happy epilogue and all of these people are alive, Lucas is gonna be a freaking government FBI agent or like a detective or something. Him and Steve, like, working at the Hawkins PD together or whatever. They're the best. Nancy, a journal, like, come on. A family affair. Steve's, no, I can't make that joke yet. Season 2, we'll make that joke about Steve and his many adoptive children. But for now, Lucas sees power vans, similar to the van of the man who parked out his house, and he realizes, oh crap, they're from the lab. Not good. Very not good. So this is how Lucas, rides back into town frantically, tries to get on his walkie. While we cut to Mike, Dustin, and Eleven heading back into Mike's basement as the bunch of lab vans start driving away, ready to apprehend Mike, Dustin, and Eleven. And that, my friends, is the end of episode 6. If I could do a 3-act structure analysis of this show, perfection. The cliffhangers, immaculate. And so that, my friends, leads us to episode 7, The Bathtub. We're in the home stretch now. The final 2 episodes of season 1. Episode 7, The Bathtub. I have to say, the episode titles of this show are always very succinct, but they're also very good. So, Mike helps Elle clean up because she's been wandering the woods for most of the day. They almost kiss, very sweet, before Dustin interrupts them and says that Lucas is in trouble. He's on the line, he's trying to get through, whatever. And he's trying to radio in. And he radios, and then, oh crap, guys, listen here, okay? The lab knows they're coming. The bad men are coming. And Lucas repeats this over and over until they finally realize, oh crap, we're screwed. So Mike goes upstairs from the basement, because the kids always hang out in the basement. He looks out his window and he sees the power trucks coming up. He's quite disturbed by this. He thinks it's quite odd, and he realizes, oh crap, the bad men are coming, they're getting out. Rushes back downstairs after the great comedic line, if anyone asks, I've left the country, to his mother being very confused, searching for Nancy because she doesn't know where Nancy is. I feel really bad for Karen in the early seasons. Anywho, Mike, Dustin, and Elle all run out, grab on bikes, Elle on the back of Mike's, and they try to go up and escape the lab. And oh crap, there they are. So they bike around back, whatever, trying to get to Lucas. They meet him up one place, and they do. And then they're biking, and there's a giant lab van coming straight at them. And we get an iconic Stranger Things visual. We, my friends, get the epic, iconic brilliance that is Eleven flipping the power van with her mind straight over our kids and crashing it, blocking the others as they bike away with Lucas in tow. It is a brilliant scene, and I love it. And Cormac, sorry, my cat. Anywho, the kids, all 4 of them regroup now, head to the junkyard. Lucas apologizes to Elle. My cat is trying to scratch the couch, it's fine. Lucas apologizes to Elle. Everything is fine and dandy. And Lucas also makes up with Mike. Okay, now we're hiding in the junkyard. Hopper and Joyce go back to the police station, and they find out that Jonathan and Nancy are there. They got arrested, talk. Then the deputies show what's in Jonathan's trunk to Hopper. He's surprised, and we finally freaking get a bit of explanation. And we finally get this group and this group, the adults and the teens, coming together. And we finally get some exposition. And so these groups, they all join up. I'd also like to know that while these groups are joining up, Karen Wheeler and her husband are told by the government agents that Elle is a communist spy who has bamboozled their son into hiding her. Banger. I cannot wait for Karen Wheeler to find out about everything that has happened in season 5 and to go absolutely, crazy. I cannot wait for it to happen. Hopper and Joyce exchange info with Jonathan and Nancy, and then they go home to the Wheelers, and they see the government agents there, and they realize they got to get to them. So we try to figure out where could the kids be, what's happening. So they don't know where they are, but Jonathan knows how to figure it out. They head back to the Byers' home, and they get Will's walkie. Remember, all the boys have a walkie. While this is all happening, the boys and Elle all coalesce their information. Lucas explains what he saw at the lab and that they figured out that it's a government lab that makes weapons to fight the commies and stuff. That's the direct quote, which I find hilarious because of season 3. Season 3 makes the line about fighting the commies that much funnier. Anywho, I digress again because I'm trying my best. So that's what's going on here. So the boys discuss this when they hear a helicopter above, and so they have to hide in an old bus. They are freaking out. They're worried they're going to get caught, so they're really scared. Then the walkie blares. They're thinking it's a trap. It's Nancy on the walkie. She's trying to get Mike to answer. He doesn't. They think it's a trap. Then Hopper answers. He says he knows about the girl. They can help them. Where are you? They tell them to meet up. Now, also, I forgot to mention, because I was checking my notes, I forgot to mention, the reason that Hopper and Joyce know that the boys are connected to this is because the bully whose arm was broken shows up at the police station, tells the tale of the girl who broke his arm with her mind. Hopper figures out that must be this girl, and the bully says he was hanging out with Mike and Dustin, and so that's how they knew to look for the boys and 11. That's how they knew that things were happening. Back to my boy Steve here. He's feeling guilty, and so he goes back to the movie theater after, splitting off from his friends, still bleeding from the instant, and goes to clean up the spray paint that they put there. My boy's a nice guy. He is a good character, okay? Steve is good, and I will stand by it. So that's what Steve's doing while all this is going down. So Hopper ends up going to the junkyard, rescuing the kids right after some government agents showed up about to capture them. Great timing with Hopper there. So the chief picks up the boys and Elle. Dustin, at this point in time, is continuously making Empire Strikes Back references, which are iconic. He keeps thinking Hopper will be Lando Calrissian. I feel like I should analyze all the Star Wars references in this show and try to see if they come to any theory, but I don't have the time for that. So everyone meets Elle. Well, these four meet Elle in what I think is the only scene in the entire show that Nancy and Elle are in the same room for, but I'm not even certain. They do have a scene in the season 5 trailer together, though, which I'm excited about. So Joyce is motherly to Elle. She tries to help her. And everyone on this board, except for Steve, who comes in later, finally is in the same scene together. They're in the same room, aside from Will as well. And they all come together and express their knowledge and figure out what's happening. And that is where we're at, guys. That is where we're at. So we get a big expo dump. Basically, they retell everything we've already discussed. Hopper, however, the new info is Hopper reveals he knows what the gate is. He's been there. He saw the viney gate in the middle of the lab, so Hopper knows where to go. So Joyce then asks Elle if she can talk to Will, and she says she can, but the boys figure out that they need a sensory deprivation tank. So they call Mr. Clark, who ironically may be the only person in this town whose phone isn't tapped, and they go, well, how much will we need of this, this, and this? So they then figure out that they need a lot of salt, they need a lot of water, and so they start, gathering supplies. And so they decide to head to the middle school gym where they will build a sensory deprivation tank out of a pool and some salt. And so basically, Elle gets into the sensory deprivation tank. She sees some images of Will cowering in a corner. He is hiding in Byers' castle, and he sort of looks like he's dying. He's not doing well. And so the episode ends with Joyce and Hopper heading to the lab to try and get the gate open and get to Will, and Will hiding in his castle in the Upside Down. Now, really important thing, this episode is the quickest of all of my recaps because it's genuinely a lot of exposition and action, and it's great exposition and action, but that's not really, it's not good, if it's not fun for me to just give a play-by-play of all the action. Will I do that for season 4, episode 9? Potentially, but not right now. And that, my friends, is the end of episode 7, which brings us to the penultimate episode, episode 8, The Upside Down. So this one, a lot of stuff happens. Basically, opening up, Hopper and Joyce make a deal with the lab that they will give up Elle in exchange for saving Will. Now, the boys don't know this, and the teenagers don't know this, and this is bad. So that's where we're at. The boys and Elle are left at the school, while Nancy and Jonathan decide, you know what, screw it, we're going to kill a Demogorgon because we want to. So they take all their weapons that they bought earlier, and they head back to the Byers' house, where they know the Demogorgon has been, trouncing around. Also, again, remember at this time we figured out the Demogorgon is drawn to blood, gates open from blood. That'll come into play. There's a long sequence, again, one of the only scenes where I like one of the only Nancy Jonathan scenes I genuinely like, where they set up the house as like a giant deadly trap. They set up the lights, it's really cool and it's fun. And so then they slice their hands to draw the Demogorgon near them with blood, and Demogorgon with blood, again, while the boys are waiting around for something to happen. This is also corresponds with Dustin going, yeah, Nancy's kind of badass now, which is one of my favorites. Dustin also goes, Elle needs to be recharged. So they decide to raid the fridge, do some stuff. But while they're doing that, Mike then sees the government vans pull up outside. Big no-no. Big no-no that. And he starts going, oh crap, they found us, and they all have to start running. Cut back to Nancy and Jonathan. My boy Steve, my darling Steve, shows up at Jonathan's house, not knowing Nancy would be there to apologize to Jonathan for getting into a fight with him. Nancy answers the door. Steve's really confused. Steve wants to apologize. Nancy's trying to get him to leave to protect him. Jonathan's confused as hell. Steve pushes in. He goes, what the heck is happening here? Because the house is a death trap. And Nancy pulls out her revolver on Steve. Steve starts losing it. And Jonathan's like, what the heck are you doing, girl? And Nancy keeps going, I'm doing this for you, Steve. I'm doing this for you to try and get him out of there. And while she's doing this, the light starts to flicker and Jonathan screams her name and she goes, oh crap, it's coming. Well, she doesn't actually say that, but that's me. I saw a clip recently of Joe Keery going like, there was a certain number of swears they were allowed to use in season 1 and they were all reserved for the kids. And so the teenagers weren't allowed to swear, which I think is hilarious. So I just thought I'd mention that. Where are my notes? So the Demogorgon shows up, almost kills them. They run back into the back of the house. They fight it off a bit. Then eventually they've sort of fought it off. Steve runs, as if he's going to leave. But then he comes back, picking up the spiked bat that Nancy made and beating the hell out of the Demogorgon right as it's about to kill Nancy and Jonathan. Just whacking that thing. It is a great scene. Iconic, badass Steve moment. My boy was a hero here. He was a avenging angel and we love him. So that's what's happening. This is a great comedic trio. When I told you there was a scene with these 3 and Dustin in it in the trailer, I went, oh crap, someone is dying there. And then I went, this is going to be a really funny fight scene before someone dies. Anywho, they eventually end up lighting the Demogorgon on fire and I think relatively successfully kill it, which is sort of fun. So that's where we're at with them. While this is happening, Hopper and Joyce are in the Upside Down in hazmat suits. I'm not going to recount everything they did because it's really boring. Basically, they're going through the Upside Down. They're figuring stuff out. And so they end up in the Upside Down. They end up doing that. And so eventually they find Will trapped in a weird vine thing. And they detach him. And they bring him back home to the real world. Will Byers has been returned. Damaged, traumatized, potentially turned into a wizard, but brought home nonetheless. And while this is happening, back to our boys in Elle, who, if you remember, are, running from the government agents at the school, trying to escape. And then, in doing so, Elle ends up killing a bunch of the government agents. This results in a lot of blood. Dr. Brenner shows up with some others. They restrain the boys. Dr. Brenner, is going to try and get Elle. And then suddenly, the soldiers are pointing guns at the boys. And suddenly, the boys remember blood. And a Demogorgon rips its way out of the school wall and starts murdering people. So the boys are like, we got to get the heck out of here. They grab Elle. Dustin carries Elle out of the building and they are running. They are running to a classroom to hide. Elle eventually, with the help of the boys, destroys the Demogorgon and closes the gate that was opened in the school. However, as a result, she ends up trapped on the other side of the gate. Mike is devastated. The boys are pained. And then we cut away. We're done. We're at the hospital with Will. And this is actually the first scene in the whole show where almost everyone's in the same room. Everyone's in the room. Steve and Nancy are sort of, everyone's sitting in the hospital. Steve's been beat to hell. Jonathan's been beat to hell. I think Lucas isn't doing that well. Everyone's in pain. That's where we're at. The boys finally reunite with Will for the first time all season in the hospital, and we get our party boys hugging. It's great, it's cute, it's sweet. And then we cut forward 2-ish months, or like 6-ish weeks, to Christmas. It is Christmas time. The boys are once again playing D&D in Mike's basement. Steve is over at the Wheelers for Christmas with Nancy. They've made up. They're happily together. Everything's great. Nancy gives Jonathan his Christmas present, which is a new camera, as an apology. Everyone's happy. Everything's great. It's delightful. Jonathan drives Will home because Joyce is paranoid now and does not let him bike on his own. Good mother Joyce, you've learned from the mistakes of others' 80s parents. We then get my favorite section of this episode, purely because Carol of the Bells is one of my favorite songs of all time, and an ethereal, haunting edition of Carol of the Bells over the last couple minutes of this show, of this season, amazing. It gives you chills. Oh, we see a pan out with Carol of the Bells playing in the background of an article about the boy who came back to life. Will, the government, managed to give a backstory. And we see Hopper. Hopper's at the police station grabbing some cookies. And he brings them out into the woods and leaves them in the woods, in the snow. Why does he do that? One might wonder. Who is he leaving them for? One might wonder. Who could guess? I won't. That's a season 2 thing. I won't spoil it for you. And we finally cut back to the Byers family, happy together and all sitting down for Christmas dinner. Will he leaves the table for a minute, goes to the bathroom, and in his haste, he ends up puking out a weird, creepy, viney, red slug monster thing into the sink, and we get the reveal that nothing is over yet and nothing is as it seems. And that, my friends, was the entirety of Stranger Things Season 1. I hope you all enjoyed what is probably going to end up being 2.5 hours, if I'm smart about it, of me ranting and raving about Stranger Things. I hope you had fun. I hope this was an enjoyable experience. If you're interested in more of these videos, because I am going to be making one for 2, 3, and 4, please consider hitting that subscribe button. And for funsies, I want you to comment which character you think changed the most from season 1 to season 4. And Steve Harrington, as you know, is my personal favorite. I am biased towards Steve Harrington, but I think a lot of these characters have really great arcs, and I think that would be a fun discussion to have in the comments. Again, thank you for watching this video. Thank you for consuming my insanity as I recap this. And I hope you all are as excited for season 5 as I am. I did say I was going to have a spoiler section for like theories, but I kind of decided midway through the video after I'd watched the season 5 trailer that there's no way I can do that. I need like months to get my theories in a row. Most of my theories reference stuff from season 2 or season 4 as well, so I will probably mention those maybe at the end of my season 2 and season 4 videos. But yes. And for the schedule, I have a schedule. I am sticking to it. I'm going to release one video a month. Well, I'm probably going to release more videos, but one Stranger Things a month leading up to the show. So July's video will be the season 1 recap. August, you get season 2. September, season 3. And October, my birth month, my favorite month, we get season 4, my favorite season. So if you are interested in that, again, hit that subscribe button and stick around for more chaos and entertainment. Bye, my lovelies. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day.